Continuing on with the Nova, this time I'm working on this engine here, and this is the engine that came out of the car. It's not the original engine though. Originally this car probably would have came with a 262 V8 or maybe a 350 V8, uncertain, but I know it was a V8 car. The engine that I have here though, a previous owner at some point put in, and I'm not entirely certain what it is, but I know it's a 350. How do I know that? Well, let's take a look. Looking at the back of the engine on the left hand side, you can see that it says 5.7, so we know that makes it a 350. Looking a little farther up, we can see the original build date, so this is a late 86 engine. Over here on the right hand side, it's kind of hard to make out there, but that is the casting number, so a lot of times you can look that up and find out what you have, which running that code comes up as 350, 2-bolt or 4-bolt. And then coming to the front, on this pad, this is where you would normally find what type of a vehicle came out of. In this case it says CHF, and for the life of me I cannot find what CHF is. So normally you would be able to tell if that came out of a Camaro. It might tell you if that would have been in a car with an automatic, manual. I don't know what this came out of. I'm going to guess that it probably came out of something like a GMC truck, like a fleet truck of some sort. Reason I wanted to really find out what this motor came out of is so that I could figure out what the compression is and basically what I have. Now I did pull the oil pan on this. It is a 4-bolt. Back in the 80s I had a 262 V8 and I put the L79 camshaft in. I used to work at a Chevrolet dealership back in the 80s, so I bought it over the counter for something crazy like $40 for a factory cam. So I'm trying to get a little bit closer to the sound that I had, which was a little bit of a thump, and so what I wound up doing is I bought a crane cam that is for low compression engines, which I'm assuming this for 1987 engine, that it's probably going to be some rather low compression in here, so I'm keeping the stock heads on it and the like. As you can see, previous owner threw an aluminum intake on it and a quadrajet. And actually this motor didn't run too bad, just playing around with it before I yanked it out of the Nova. But it's got leaks all over the place, from valve covers to oil pan, rear seal, etc. So we're going to freshen those things up, make sure I don't see any internal damage, and I'm just going to swap a cam, just like I did back in the day when I was a poor kid and didn't have a whole lot of money. That's about all I did was a cam, carb and headers, and I had a lot of fun, so that's all we're going to be doing with this then. The comp cams, if anyone's interested, you can see the numbers of what we got on here. This is a set that has the lifters in it, so I'm going to end up having to pre-soak those. So to do that, I got some of my good pen grade zinc oil that I use in all my antique cars, so we're going to soak those lifters for the day in that. This has been sitting, I couldn't tell you for how long. The box is pretty worn, but bought that a long time ago. So this here is the timing chain gear set. So I'm going to assume what's going to be in this motor is not going to be any good. So I'm going to go ahead and swap that out then too. I doubt I paid $20 for that, but who knows. All right. Take a look at this. Since I used this riser on here, the gasket that they used, no doubt those bits of gaskets pieces went into the motor, so we'll end up having to put a new gasket on here, one that isn't like that. Now I put the engine on top dead center, so that way when I put the distributor back in, my intent is to do exactly the same. So when I pull this out, I'm going to try and keep the orientation the same, so that way the oil pump shaft, everything will line up then, because there is a little tab down the bottom. In fact, when I pull this out, and you can see that the rotor cap had rotated when I pulled that, and that's because of the gear. So it's got a spiral in, and on the bottom you'll see there's a little light tab, and that goes into the shaft for the oil pump. So you need that to line up for the distributor to sink all the way in. So I like trying to keep that oriented the way it should be. Doesn't look bad. There's a little bit of caking there, but really it's not too bad. I'm alright with that. Just getting ready to remove this balancer. I don't know what it means when you got oil pouring out of the out of the front of the crank, so wanted to see what that is. Using my balancer puller here. So I just ran the bolt through. I'm going to put the cap on so that way it centers it. Found my correct bolts. We'll set this up here and alright, so I'm going to pull this camshaft out. You pull this gear, which I think is a factory gear because it's got GM stamped on it. We're going to have to undo these rockers. So just pulled the lifters up and out. And really no big deal. They actually don't look too bad. Well, we'll see what this looks like. See how these lobes look. For the most part, they really don't look too bad. One of the things I forgot to mention was when you're doing a cam, you also have to remove the fuel pump because there is a rod in there that will also run on a lobe of the cam to activate that pump. So you're going to have to remove that then as well. Alright. Ooh, stickers. Okay. Time to install the new camshaft. What we're going to end up having to do, we're going to have to clean this off first. We're going to spray it with some simple carb cleaner, wipe it down, and then we're going to start lubing this up with the cam lube, and we'll get this thing installed. This timing gear off the crank, and I used a 3-inch gear puller. If you notice, I put an old nut at the end here because I didn't want that to go in and mess up the threads. So actually I'm going to have to pry that back off. But I don't want to touch that right now because I got it pretty hot. I had to use a propane torch on it just to expand that a little bit, and then it finally came and came off of there. So one of the things that you'll notice is there is a little circle on there, and there's another circle that is on the new gear. So those are going to end up having to be lined up. So I put the new gear on, and doing that was simply just lining it up, just using a piece of pipe and a hammer, and then tapping that in until I could tell by the sound that I bottomed out, that it hit the end of the crank snub. So we're ready to put this chain set together. And what I did was I took my chain over and dipped it in some of that zinc oil. And I possibly didn't have to do that, but I just wanted to make sure that it was nicely lubed up. Alright, so what I'm trying to do is get that where it should be in line, and then get the chain on it, connect it, and there we go. Lined right up. Again, this divot to that circle, and that's how you line them up. So while I'm at this point, I'm going to put a new rear main seal in this engine. This actually didn't come out of this engine. It's still in there, but I actually had another one here from another defunct motor from long ago. So just to simplify things, I'm going to go ahead, pry this seal out, pop a new one in, and then I'm just going to swap this one for the one that's already on there. Make it a lot easier while it's sitting on the engine stand, as opposed to me trying to finagle my way in and push a new one in while the crank's in place. So At this point, we're now ready with the lifters installed, push rods back in, balancers back on, set to top dead center. We're now ready to go ahead and start setting the timing on this. We're going to follow what I've had since the 80s when I did my first Nova, was this particular book. And in here, which is where all my stains are from me doing this in the past, it gives me the scenario what we have to do, or the pattern we have to follow. Just cylinder number 1, which right now on top dead center for number 1, number 6 should be rocking. So counting back here to the 6th one, I see both my lifters are even with each other. Same way with number 1. I've also dropped the screwdriver down in here to feel that I am indeed on top dead center, as well as on my timing mark, so I know I'm at the right spot. So what we'll be doing to adjust this is turning these while I can spin the push rod, and that should spin freely. I should just start to feel the tension on it, then stop. Then I want to give this 1/2 turn, and that'll be both the intake and the exhaust that are done that way. I haven't taken the play out of that yet. Okay, I'm just now getting pressure on. I'm going to back up just a little bit. Okay, there it's just spinning. Now I'm going to give it 1/2 turn. And now that one there is set. To the next one. So this time I'm going to reinstall the distributor. Now I kept this exactly the way I took it out. So we're going to go ahead and slide it back in. Remember that for this to engage in the cam, it's going to spin. So that's why I took it out and left it exactly the way I had it. So that way it should drop back in. We'll line that vacuum canister up the way it was before, and we'll see if it'll engage with the oil pump shaft. Perfect. One of the things that I need to do is I want to replace this this piece with a 90°. And the reason I want to do that is, one, this would be what would come out of your stock manifold, and that is designed that it comes out at an angle. And on these aluminum manifolds, they usually come straight out. And so the previous owner did that, and what that'll end up doing is when that heater hose is on here, it's going to come up and curve, and what it's going to do is it's going to pinch right here, and it just looks ugly. So by putting a 45 on it, I could have it at a slight angle, so that way my hose will come here, right around the valve cover, right behind the alternator, and be a nice clean look. So this is about a $10 item on eBay. It's steel. You can get them a little bit cheaper if you get them in aluminum. I prefer to have steel, so that's what I'm going to swap out now. So this gives you an idea what that'll look like. A lot cleaner, rather than having the hose literally sticking up like this and folded over. So there you go.